Welcome to the INREM podcast. We discuss the law for real estate investors. Andy and Sean are both attorneys. Nothing said in this discussion should be considered legal advice. We're simply providing information and education. You should consult with an attorney in your state regarding any specific legal issue you may have. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining the show. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with Sean St. Clair. We are live from the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup taking place at the Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. If you're new to the show, the NREM podcast, that is, give us a like. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. YouTube is the preferred venue. If you go to YouTube, you can find us at NREM Podcast. That is at NREM Podcast. But if you're watching us today, we're glad to have you. But you can also be here monthly at the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate. And with us today, we have the host of the event, the one and only Augie Panev. Augie, how are you?
Hey, Sean, how are you guys?
Good. How are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I'm so happy, guys, here.
Yeah, thanks for having us out again. We always appreciate it. We think it's a great event for not only marketing but learning information. So why don't you give our listeners an idea about what's in store tonight and what topics you guys are going to be covering?
So the market has been shifting, like everybody knows, for the last 6 months, especially, and with the last couple of years, prices going up, and there's not such a great deals for fixed and flips. So we're all looking for other opportunities how to make good deals. And one of the things that I wanted to research personally myself that I like to know more about is building duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, maybe some bigger units after that. So I personally wanted to learn about this. So what better way just invite some of the gurus that do these things live and ask him all the questions. So I wanted to cover the whole process from finding the land, then find a guy who really builds duplexes, fourplexes, and then find another guy that builds bigger units from 5 to 50. So we can ask him live questions. Hey, how do you do this? How do you approach it? What's the problem with zoning, the city, permits, expenses, and all these little things, so we can learn and eventually just jump at another way of investing in real estate.
Why don't you give our listeners an idea if they're just seeing this for the first time and they're like, wow, what is this Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup? Give them an idea about how often you do this and examples of the kind of topics you guys cover.
So we started doing this a year and 2 months now. I think it's been a while. So I started providing education for buy and hold investors, people that want to buy and hold property specifically. So every month on the last Tuesday of the month, we do networking between 4 and 5, and we have open bar, we have food. Also, we're just adding in something new, the real estate legal hotline with you guys. So anybody that wants to come between 4 and 5, sit here where I'm sitting and ask you real questions about real estate legal issues, and you can answer live. So we do this every month. I invite people that actually practice real estate, and they teach us exactly what they do, and we can ask them real questions so we can learn of their experience. We do it every month. So hopefully, we're gonna have some good experience and make some money out of it.
Yeah, so I know that a big part of this event, in addition to the learning, is the marketing opportunity, which takes place from 4 to 5. And I know that that's something you want to go do and go market with the folks that are here. But we appreciate you having us here, and look forward to having a good event.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk later.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. All right. With that, if you are new to if you're just joining us, we are here at the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup. Again, if you want to come in person, it's not too late to do it. It starts at 5 o'clock. 4 to 5 is a marketing opportunity, but if you're just learning about it, you can come and meet and greet a lot of folks in this area. So remember, it is the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate at the Scottsdale area Association of Realtors. With that, we're going to talk to a few of the guests and speakers here today that are going to be presenting. First, we have Anthony Pappas. Anthony, how are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Anthony, why don't you give our listeners just an idea, a little bit about you, your company, yeah, and how you got into real estate investing?
Started off wholesaling. We focus on the wholesaling and entitling of vacant land. So that's kind of our bread and butter. And got into it about 3.5 years ago and just hit the ground running.
And your company's Mavro Properties, correct?
That's correct.
Is that what Mavro basically focuses on?
Yeah, 100% land. It's we provide off-market opportunities for builders, and now we're starting to build ourselves.
Has your strategy changed at all given the market conditions in the last year? What are you guys focusing on right now?
Being a lot more conservative on numbers and focusing on buying stuff that will look good in 12 to 24 months if the market does continue to pull back.
Gotcha. I know today's topic is find, buy, and develop land for multifamily projects. Give us an idea about what you're looking at discussing today, what you're covering.
So I'll be talking about how to acquire the land and find the off-market opportunities. That's kind of my niche. So that's what I'll be providing value on today.
Let me ask you, Anthony, have you attended the buy and hold meetup before?
I have. Yeah, it's great
Okay.
every time.
Yeah, we talk with a lot of folks, and they always one thing that we always find from the folks that have been here is that they enjoy the ability to meet other professionals, and the opportunity to market, and in addition to learning good information. Tell us a little bit. We like to ask this about a lot of our investors, not just investors, but those that watch and those that are speaking. Outside of, and maybe this is just a repeat, but outside of what you do with Mavro Properties, do you have a favorite investment strategy, or does it just change dynamically with what the market offers you?
It's changing pretty dynamically with wherever the market's going. We're trying to pivot and capitalize on that. Obviously, looking for a lot more buy and hold compared to we're flipping a lot of lots, just capitalizing on the market and the wave that was behind us. But now we're looking for more cash flow and long-term investing.
Anthony, is creative financing something that can be done with land?
So the problem we see with creative finance with land is it's hard to find somebody that will subjugate to a second position behind construction debt. So if you are looking to develop the land, I haven't found many sellers that are comfortable taking that second position behind the construction loan.
Oh, interesting. So, previously, before the market shift, you were doing some wholesaling with land,
Oh
right?
yeah, quite a bit.
And but that's kind of not doable right now. It's more of development strategy. Is that what's going on?
That's what we're kind of leaning towards. We're still locking up some wholesale deals, but not
Yeah.
with the same frequency that we were. I mean, we'd have normally 10 to 20 on the board every month, but now it's slowed down to 4 or 5 that we're consistently having.
What does it look like if you go in and you purchase land and you decide, hey, this would be great for a multifamily use, which is our topic tonight,
Right,
but the zoning is not for multifamily.
right.
Well, what has to be done? What's the process look like, and what kind of things are you going to want to build into your contract to allow for you to do that due diligence to determine whether or not you're going to be able to change that zoning?
Get with a great attorney and make sure you have a strongly worded contract that'll let you get all the entitlements done within escrow. I can't stress the power of a great attorney. I mean, you and I talk pretty frequently about different contracts and trying not to make more mistakes, but finding a great attorney to work with and building that contract so it lets you do all the entitlement within escrow, so you limit the risk that you would take on if you were to buy it and then try to rezone it yourself.
Right. So if you find a piece of property and you're like, oh man, this is great. However, we're going to have to do some entitlement work, some
Right.
rezoning, obtain a plan of development,
Mhm.
that type of thing. You're going to want to build into the contract, and so that you're going to do that before you finish, purchasing this thing. You
Absolutely.
bring the large chunk to the table.
Right.
Now, what does it look like from a time frame to make that happen? How long are you talking from having it under contract to closing escrow and having all your entitlements lined up on a project like that?
Right. It depends on how in favor the city is and if it matches the master plan. I know if you're going for like master plan amendments and stuff like that, it can really slow the process down. Before we were seeing like 8 to 12 months, but right now with the city of Phoenix, we have one that was supposed to be done 2 months ago and we're still going through the process. So it's COVID really slowed everything down. And so we're still seeing, things get pushed out 12, 14 months right now.
What are you seeing if you had to identify the biggest challenge the market's kind of throwing at you? And this might be dynamic and evolving. It might be very different than it was 3 months ago versus 6 months ago. But what's the biggest challenge the current market is throwing at your business model?
Getting sellers and buyers in aligned, especially on the wholesale side. Sellers still think it's 2021 pricing, and buyers want 2019 pricing to hedge against, the downside risk that they think they're going to see. So it's trying to get those in alignment there. And that's one of the things that we're struggling with is saying, hey, the market has changed. Interest rates have changed construction debt significantly. So we need this at a deeper discount. Sellers just aren't quite there yet.
And we like to ask this question to all of our real estate investors and lawyers that we meet. But if you had to identify it, what's the best investment advice that you've received?
Don't lose money. Warren
Don't
Buffett.
Yeah, if it were only that simple.
Yeah, if we
Right.
would all just heed that advice.
Or you can't go broke making a profit. It's kind of my mantra in the back of my mind when I get a good offer on a lot that I want to hold long term. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I would like to hold this, but probably wouldn't hurt to exit and make a profit.
Yeah, so don't be afraid to hit the sell button when the time comes.
Right,
Don't get
absolutely.
greedy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't be
another way to
greedy.
say that. All right, Anthony. Well, thank you so much for being with us. How can our listeners contact you or find you or connect with you?
Anthony Pappas on Facebook, AD Pappas on Instagram or YouTube.
All right.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for
Anthony. We look forward to hearing from your presentation tonight. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
All right. If you're just joining us, we are here live at the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup at the Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. From 4 to 5, they have a opportunity to market and meet other real estate professionals, real estate investors, hard money lenders, lawyers, you name it. Those that are involved in real estate investing are at the event. And if you're not able to make it, that's what you're watching here. You're watching us. And we have the opportunity to meet and discuss with some of the presenters here tonight what it is they're doing and what they're going to be speaking with us tonight on. Also, in addition to Anthony, who we just spoke with, we have Eric Meyerowitz. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I understand you're with Whiskey Creek Properties. Tell us about Whiskey Creek Properties. Tell us about you and how you got involved in real estate investing.
Yeah, so a lifelong friend of mine came to me and said, I want to start investing in real estate in Phoenix. And I was living here and starting getting my practice going. I'm a licensed architect. I've been doing it for close to 30 years now. And I was like, well, I'm thinking of doing a spec home. Do you want to do that with me? And he said, let's do it. And so I designed a building for a lot that we purchased. It was a tear down in Arcadia Light. And our little thing was we wanted to build super high energy efficient homes. And we were using this product called SIPS. And we used that mainly for the roof. And it was a very successful project. We built it in about 8 months, sold it, made some really good money on it. And I was like, wow, I think we have something here. So we started doing that. We did 3 more homes in that general area. And some of the sales went better than others. And then we felt like, we put so much time and energy into these projects. Why don't we build the projects and then hold on to them and rent them out? And that's how Whiskey Creek really started to take off. We started buying lots, mainly empty lots in the Garfield area and along the 7th Street corridor here in Phoenix, and started building these duplexes. Duplexes in the city of Phoenix, it's interesting. They still consider them under the single family home umbrella. So you can get a lot done without having to go through a lot of the hoops that you would if you go for 3 or more units. And so that's what we started doing. and the lots really worked well for duplexes. The size of lots that we were buying in relation to the projects that we could afford to build. So that's kind of the history of Whiskey Creek.
So how did you get into real estate investing? What's your trade?
My father was into real estate investing. That's how I learned, even though I didn't realize it. It was my dad. My dad was a surgeon in the San Francisco Bay Area, and on the side, he would buy properties. And I was like, "What are you buying all these properties for?" And he would buy little properties, and then as time went on, he would buy bigger and mainly residential apartment buildings and things like that. And so that's how I got introduced to it. I dabbled with it when I was working in LA, had a small property there. I still didn't really fully understand what the upside was to having small residential rentals. It wasn't until I moved here that I started to really understand, hey, this is a really solid asset and something, if you're in it for long term, you can do pretty well.
So today's topic is, multifamily investing. Talk to us a little bit about your multifamily portfolio and what you're doing in the multifamily space right now.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we have a few duplexes.
Okay.
We don't buy existing apartment buildings or, you know, uh, buildings that have already been constructed. Our thing, because of my skill as an architect and my connections with construction industry, is we buy lots or buildings that we can tear down and build something new. So everything is new. We build it the way we want to build it. We build it to the quality level that we want. We obviously have a budget that we need to meet all the criteria for that. And basically, it's right now we have 2 completed duplexes that are fully rented. We're building a third right now. We have a few other lots that are waiting in the queue. And we also bought some single family lots that we're going to build some homes on, just single family homes, not duplexes on. So that's kind of the portfolio right now.
Have you had a chance to meet Anthony Pappas, who was just with us a few minutes ago? He's the land guy. So
Yeah.
if you're looking for land, he might, have the hookup for you.
Yeah, so we find land in different ways. Obviously, we use the MLS a little bit.
Okay.
We have signs up on our construction sites, and we get phone calls, actually people wanting to sell. We find it from wholesalers. That's another way to do it. So it's interesting. You never know when that deal is going to show up, but I'll tell you, the sign has been a great asset to us.
So the last half an hour or so today, from about 4:30 to 5, we're going to be opening the show up to anybody here that wants to ask any type of legal question from us. Before the show, we had the opportunity to chat a little bit, and you indicated, though, that you had at least one legal question you wanted to present regarding adverse possession. So tell us about, kind of what you're dealing with there, and see what we can do to give you some direction.
In architecture and in construction, we're always talking about property lines, setbacks. All those things are really important when you're setting up a project. And recently, a client of mine came to me and told me that a gentleman on the back side of her property who had built a new home was essentially taking over the entire abandoned alley behind that lot between the 2 properties. And technically, she owns half that swath of land, but he was taking it all over. So I think this happens quite a bit around Phoenix, especially these abandoned alleys. And so there was some legal questions. How do you go about addressing this with the other property owner? We got a surveyor involved. And so I think one of the questions is, what happens when there's a situation like this, and obviously there's a disagreement amongst the neighbors, and she was not a very wealthy person. She didn't have a lot of money to spend. So like hiring an attorney and all that stuff.
Right.
It's not really in the question. So I'm sure you've come across this in your history of working as a lawyer. So how do you generally address those?
Well, so I'm going to defer to Andy here because my practice is all transactional based now, and Andy still dabbles in litigation. So I'm going to let him kind of give a shot at answering here, and I'm going to defer to his opinion on this, being the litigator amongst the two of us here.
Sure. Well, so there's a couple things that she can do, but the main legal issue here is one of adverse possession. So if somebody's asserting a claim of right on your property and using it and taking it over as their own and treating it as their own without your permission, against your or better against your will, so on and so forth, that can be a problem. So the law recognizes that, you know, if that goes on, at least in the state of Arizona, if that goes on, an adverse possession for 10 years or more, there's a potential issue. So there's a couple ways to identify a potential issue, and that is through a survey, you know, because oftentimes walls, we talked about this a little bit before, walls are just constructed oftentimes. You know, the best course of action, obviously, is to go hire a surveyor, find the lot lines, find out where I can build, and then build on my side of that line, right? The problem is people go get a bid to do a wall, and when they find out it's 30 grand to do a wall around their property, the last thing they want to do is go spend an extra 5 on a surveyor. So they just go put it up and they do it cheaply, and then you've got a problem. But if somebody's done that and they've just now done it, a lot of times it's inadvertent. They don't even mean to do it. Uh, but there's a couple things that, you know, a landowner can do in that case before you have to go to the expense of getting lawyers. One, it's your property, and you can do what you want with your property. If there's a tree you don't like on your property, you can take it down, assuming there aren't some sort of county or city restrictions on the, you know, some sort of native tree to the desert or something like that. But if there's a shed you don't like on your property, you can take it down. And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property. So one of the things you can do is just what we would call as lawyers self-help. Just go remove it, right? You know, it's your property, and do that. Another thing is adverse possession requires an act that the law calls hostile. In other words, adverse possession has to be done without your permission. Well, the second you give somebody permission to be on your land, they no longer have a claim for adverse possession. There's a variety of different ways to do that, and I've seen that done. For instance, I was involved in a case one time where somebody inadvertently put the wall on somebody else's property. They didn't even know that they did it. The neighbor happened to actually like the wall. It was painted. They would have put a wall there anyway, but they didn't have to because their neighbor put it up, so it was at their expense. But then a couple years later, they got a surveyor out because they were planning on doing some other constructions. They found out that that wall was on the property. Now they liked it, but you know, they met with a lawyer, and that lawyer says, "Look, they're doing this adverse to you. You haven't granted any permission to this. You know, you have an issue. You need to address it, and you need to address it before the statutory time, that 10 years runs out." And in that case, what the landowner did is proposed, "Hey, we like this wall. We're going to enter into a license agreement." You know, as being in real estate, what like an easement is. Well, a license is a little bit different. It's really just a written permission slip. It can be recorded if the parties want it to be, but basically says, I give you permission to be on the property. They'll usually want to address certain things like who's going to insure the wall, because now there's questions about whose property it is and who's going to indemnify the other party. But one way around stopping a claim for adverse possession would be by granting a license or granting some sort of permission. Those you don't really necessarily need a lawyer involved in, but it's gonna require, you know, contact with that person. But if all else fails, there's always self-help. You know, it is your property. You can remove it, and you can take and should take any action to secure that border.
What kind of things is the neighbor doing to take over that alley? I mean, are they
So this developer, you know, he built this two-story home. It's totally out of scale and context with the neighborhood. All the other homes are single-story homes. So he's one of those people that just wants to build square footage and doesn't really care about the neighborhood. And he built a pool right up against the property line. So of course, when you think about, oh, I'd love to have another 15 feet of yard space beyond my pool. I'd love that. So that's why he did it. He just basically he put up fences on the either side, enclosing this area. And that's when my client called me, says, I think my neighbor is taking over some of my land in the alley. And I was like, well, let's go take a look. And sure enough, that's what he was doing. So in the end, she worked it out. It unfortunately cost her a lot of grief. She's an elder lady. It's not something you want to do. It's not something, if you're a developer and you're in this situation, do the right thing and just take the land that is rightfully yours, and not create such a commotion, especially for this elderly resident, your neighbor, at, at the very least to go through this. I think what's a good point here is if you're in real estate investing and you're looking at a property and you're looking at, you can look at satellite views and stuff. And remember, those are all just graphic. Those are not legal lines that you see on your screen. So if you see something that looks like the property line is on one side or the other side of a wall or a structure, right? You should get a surveyor to go out and do a perimeter survey of the lot. My business partner, we recently bought a house that actually happened to sit on the property line. We actually bought two houses right next door to each other, so it didn't matter to us. But if somebody had come along and wanted to buy that one house, I don't think you could complete that transaction. No bank would loan on that.
Well, and funny you should mention that taking a look at those aerial assessor lines, their title companies have started using that now. And so the title examiner will take a look. And to your point, if it's, just slightly off, they're not going to worry about it because they know that it's just lines on a page and it's not 100% accurate by any stretch. But if it looks to be off significantly, they're saying timeout, there's an encroachment issue, and this needs to be dealt with, resolved before we're going to ensure this transaction. And so, it is important to, as part of your due diligence, especially when you're talking about more sophisticated purchases such as land and commercial and multifamily and things like that, where you're going to come out of pocket more, or you have bigger plans and use for this property than just a house. You want to do that due diligence and use the resources available, which includes those GIS maps on the assessor's website, and take a look and see, what those property lines look like. And you know this, but I'm guessing a lot of people will be shocked when they start doing that. There's a lot of encroachments going on in Maricopa County.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't tell you how many neighborhood meetings that I go to about people who are building these big homes, and they're saying they're within the setback. They're less than 3 feet away from the property wall. And of course, the point is the property wall doesn't define the property line. You have to get a surveyor to come out and shoot those lines, and then you can measure from those lines where the building actually sits. So it's really important. I would say every real estate investor, if you're doing this type of work, you need to find a really good surveyor who knows all the ins and outs of these property lines, because it really can become a big factor.
Well, and a surveyor is also important. If you do identify the problem, you need the surveyor, because normally the lines aren't just straight. So you can't just say the 10 feet east of lot 44. It's normally like a pie shape where the wall's constructed. And so let's say that you do discover this. Hey, this has been built on my property and I need to do something, or 10 years from now, I'm going to lose property that's mine, right? So decide, okay, I don't want adverse possession. I don't want that time frame to run. So I need to do something. Well, the first step in doing something is sending a demand letter what we call as attorneys a quiet title demand letter to the neighbor and basically saying, hey, look, that fence is on our property. We need to quiet this title, execute this quitclaim deed. And the quitclaim deed is going to reference specifically that strip of property. You know, you can't ask them to quitclaim their entire property or your entire property. You have to have a surveyor map out and give you the actual dimensions of the property that's being adversely possessed. So you can then send that quitclaim deed out so that if you do have to file a lawsuit, you can obtain your attorney's fees. Because if you don't send that out and wait your 20 days and you file a lawsuit prematurely, or before you send that letter out, you don't get a right to recover your attorney's fees, even if you win. So having a surveyor in there early is critical, both from knowing what you're dealing with perspective, as well as the legal perspective.
Now, one other little interesting tidbit about that situation with my client and the developer. One day she called me, she says, I think the guy removed the pins, the surveyor pins on the corner of the lot. And I called my surveyor and he goes, hey, I think that's a legal thing. You can't touch those pins. We talked a little bit about this before. What's the implications of removing those surveyor pins?
That's outside of my bailiwick, and I think Andy's is as well. But if you do trespass to do it, that's a crime.
There you
know,
go.
And
Trespassing is number one.
Number one. But whether or not there's a criminal statute as far as removing those surveyor pins, you know, I would think that there's a problem there, because those pins are used by subsequent surveyors and they rely upon those pins. You know, you don't know this, but if you go out to your house, there's pins everywhere.
Absolutely.
You know, and the subsequent surveyors know how to identify those and use those pins to basically map out your property.
I've seen surveyors go in the middle of the road. They know there's a pin somewhere under there and they start digging in the road. Now, whenever a road is repaved, their contract supposedly is to put the little markers that we see of those little round discs. They're supposed to put those back. They never do that. So the surveyor has to go out, get his pickaxe and start digging for that pin, looking for it. And eventually he will find it. So it's really interesting how important those little corner markers are. If you remove those, you're in big trouble. So,
well, and not only that, in addition to it being a trespass, the landowner has spent significant money with a surveyor to put those pins there, right? So you're really not only trespassing, but you're damaging and destroying what that owner's done on their property. I mean, that's you know, we've talked about the criminal possibilities of that, but there's certainly civil liability to something like that, to the landowner, to go onto their property, to do things that cause any kind of damage to the property. They're, you know, that gives them a right to potentially seek compensation for something like that. So there's a whole host of problems anytime you cross somebody else's property line, which you necessarily have to do if you're going to mess with survey boundaries that have been put there by them and that are the technical legal description areas of that. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being with us. Give our listeners an idea. How can they find you and connect with you on social media or by email? What does that look like?
Yeah, so you can go to our websites, whiskeycreekproperties.com, and you can see some of the projects we've been working on. You can also find me on my own website, which is elmarchitect.com. That's my initials. And you can see more projects that I've done. It's mainly single family custom work. That's my bread and butter. And that's what I was doing for 20 years in Los Angeles. But I have some few projects here in the Arizona area that are on that website. And you can reach out to me there. Happy to talk to you about investing in multifamily. And also if you wanted to do single family rentals, which are very popular in Phoenix and can be very lucrative if you do it right. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Yeah,
really
Eric,
appreciate it.
Eric, thanks so much. Thanks so much for being with us, Eric, with Whiskey Creek Properties. Look forward to hearing from you during the buy and hold meetup.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric.
You have a good one. All right, if you are just now joining us, we are live at the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup. That is at the Scottsdale, Arizona, Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. We are live here today. It's an event you can come to live and hear good information from speakers. Today, the topic is find, buy, and develop land for multifamily projects. And we've just spoken to two of the hosts that will, or not hosts, but speakers rather, who are speaking today. Eric Myrowitz of Whiskey Creek Properties and Anthony Pappas at Mavro Properties. Sean, how are we looking? Do we have any other guests? Or we
Augie's working on lining up our last speaker that we're going to interview tonight. So hopefully we'll have somebody here soon.
All right. I think it's interesting. One of the things that came to mind as we were speaking with Eric about adverse possession and talking about aerial and satellite footage. There's two things I think that are worth noting for real estate investors out there, especially in Maricopa County. If you intend on utilizing that information is not good and shouldn't be relied on for purposes of the actual legal description, the actual line of the property. But it is good information for real estate investors to utilize in order to identify potential encroachments onto the property that give you as the real estate investor an idea that, hey, there might be a claim for adverse possession here. That might be something I need to know about, and is something that if I buy this property is something I am going to have to work through. So something at least to keep in mind. All right, so for our third speaker tonight at the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup, we have Jared Vidalis. Jared, thanks for joining us.
Nice to be here, guys.
Yeah, nice to have you. Jared, would give our listeners a little bit of background on you and how you got into real estate investing.
Ooh, man, how much time you got?
Oh, we've got plenty. Give it to us.
Man, I came out of college in 2012, moved to Arizona. I've always wanted to get in real estate, but being in California, the the price points out there were just way too high for a small guy like me to make anything work. So coming out, to Arizona for the big corporate gig, I was looking at ways to get into real estate, right? I was a project engineer for a Fortune 50 company, and I was managing 40 million bucks of construction with this company. But, I'm not a big corporate guy, right? I always have to work for myself. I hate the boundaries because I give 110% every single time. And being in a job, that doesn't necessarily mean more money. So at about 2.5 years into that job, I just went out and bought 2 houses out in the west side of Phoenix, made every mistake imaginable, right? I had contractors stealing from me, went over a project that should have taken 4 months. It took 10 months, but the market was going up significantly. It gave me a little bit of cushion to make some money and for me to get back on my feet and say, okay, let's give this thing a shot again. So long story short, took that experience and started flipping about 100 homes a year between 2015 till still do it today. And that's how I got started. Just started buying homes.
So what is your company that you're working through?
So my company is Equity Connect Holdings. So we focus on we're high volume fix and flip company. Like I said, we'll flip 100 homes a year. We'll take about 25% of those, refinance them out, portfolio those, and just let those do their own thing. Right. About 3 years ago, we were looking at our portfolio and we're like, man, this is it's boring, right? Holding rental properties, and it's not as easy as people think, but we love it so much. How do we scale the rental portfolio? So we decided that we were going to go out and buy larger assets. But at the time, I couldn't justify, paying 4 caps for 1970s vintage product on multifamily. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just go out and build it, right? Because we'll have that builder margin in there. We have full control of the product through the design process, and we get to cherry pick our sites, right? So we're not necessarily limited to what's coming through the pipeline, whether it's a Maryvale or an East Mesa. We could go find the locations we want. we could buy as big as we want, an acre, 10 acres, whatever it is, raise the capital all at one time and just press go. So we're building at the same time. Now we're building build for rent communities. We have a project we just started out in Mesa, just about a quarter mile north of downtown. And we're going through final site planning on a larger community, 70 homes in Arcadia Light. And those will all be rental, build for rent communities that will refinance and hold on to long term.
So, okay. So these will be homes as opposed to apartments.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. So
very
it's
cool.
kind of like that new asset class everybody's talking about, build for rent. It's essentially a hybrid between your high density multifamily asset and like a detached subdivision, right? It's kind of a hybrid of the two where it's all purpose built for rent. It's typically higher density than what you see on the detached subdivision side, but you operate it like a multifamily asset and you get multifamily financing when you go and refinance. So like you're capturing the favorable demographic from single family, which is typically a stickier income stream, but you leverage the operational efficiencies from kind of a multifamily management style.
So Anthony Pappas was on earlier, and he does a lot of land investing and ventured into development as well. Well, for a project like that, how long does it take to go through the city process of entitlements and zoning and
Oh man,
development plans?
that's the magic question. If I'm going through a full rezone, it could take anywhere from 15 to 20 months, depending on how gracious the neighbors are. If you don't have to go through a rezone and you're just going through site plan approval, it could take anywhere from 6 to 12 months, depending if you have product ready to go to put on those lots. And also depends, if you already have the team in place who you're already used to working with, because typically that could get the project through much quicker.
Now, are you purchasing any already built multifamily units, or is it simply, hey, I'm building and doing it myself at this point?
Building and do it myself, because you could create a bigger builder margin by being at the very front end of the development cycle, because typically you create more margin depending on where you're entering that development cycle, right? So I'm buying a raw piece of land, then I go get it rezoned. Now that land's worth more. Then I'm getting it entitled. Now it's worth more. Now I'm actually going through the full land development and vertical construction, and that has its margin component to it. So by being at the very front end, I'm able to push that value and create a much, much bigger margin. So technically I'm getting, let's say I'm building all in, after debt service and all that stuff, I'm in at, $280 a door. If I were to buy that same product today, it would cost me $440 a door. So now I have some margin. I'm able to cash flow it more. It's less equity to bring to the table to be in that deal. So yeah, I like being at the front end and taking the risk.
And are you still in the single family residence game, or are you pretty much out and focusing?
No, still very much in it. We have a full machine, and it's a turn and burn machine. So, we still, flip a ton of homes, and that's our cash to live on today. Because these development projects, I mean, they could take you, depending on where the land is at and what stage, it could take you 4.5 years until you get $1 from that community. So, we're still very much flipping. We got to pay the bills today. Still very much holding on to assets and growing that portfolio, because that's the whole reason why we got into the development anyways. So we're still running that thing.
Now, are you focusing only on Arizona, or are you doing some stuff out of state as well?
No, only Phoenix. That's it. We have a really amazing team, really great attorneys. There's so many levels and layers of risk in development. We wanted to, and development's all about mitigating the downside, right? So we're reducing that risk by just staying in an area that we know and knowing those city officials.
Very cool.
So what kind of challenges have you been experiencing given the market conditions? I know that's kind of an evolving question. It might be a very different thing than what it was 6 months ago versus what it is now, and it's probably a different answer on your different strategies long term versus your flips. But what kind of challenges are you facing right now?
Yeah, on the development side, it's just getting from the development side, it's about, is our model accurate, right? Because when we're going into a development project, we have a long list of assumptions. What's the rent rates? Is it going to go up and down over time? What's the operational expenses? Is that going to go up and down over time? What's the exit cap rate? What's the permanent debt rate going to be on the back end? And are we going to have to do a cash in refi? Or are we going to be able to take out our total capital stack at the very end? So it's ever changing. It's very, very fluid. So kind of a way we overcome that was we're over raising, right? We're engineering the capital stack in a way where we're bringing much more equity to the table. So we know we're not doing a capital call when we go and refi that asset, which is the last thing you want to do.
Sure. Well, Jared, we really appreciate you being here. So give our listeners an idea about how they can connect with you, whether it be on social media, or what is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You could, without saying my long-winded email, you could find me on Instagram and, oh, did I delete my Instagram app? Okay. See, I'm trying to be more efficient with my time. You could find me at my email. It's going to be J Vidalis. So that's spelled V as in Victor, IDALES as in Sam at equityconnect.com. And if anybody has any land opportunities, if anybody wants to partner up on a deal, would love to talk to you guys.
Awesome. Well, Jared, thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate that. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say tonight at the event. And thanks so much.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys.
Talk to you again soon. All right. If you're just joining us, we are live here at the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup. That is live at the Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. It's a great event. If you've never been, you can be here. You can be here live, or you can watch us in person. We get a chance to talk with some of the folks that join us here and are here in attendance. So with that, we have another guest. We're going to talk with him. Let's make sure he gets his headphones.
So Brian, Andy, we have Brian Atlas with Green Elephant Development.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Hey, thanks for sitting down with us and chatting today.
Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it. Looks like not only do I trust you guys to do all my legal documents, but I have a super great question today. And one of it has to do with the length of a contract. So it's probably a pretty easy one for you, but I did bring the file here because it's kind of an interesting situation. This guy's a veteran, and he's unique in the fact that we've been trying to get him to move to another place, and so it's always been challenging to get somebody to know where they're going, and they don't want to sell until they know where they're going. Plus, he's a hoarder, and so it makes it difficult. So there wasn't any like showings or anything that we could really take to the bank. So it's a lot of time has passed since we originally got the purchase contract done. And the fact is he's 78 years old, and I really, I care about the guy, and that's why I've given him so much time. But it's coming to the point where there's a tax lien, and February 3rd is the final deadline. And I've said, look, we've ran out of time. You really have to sign these documents. So I prepared all the closing documents through Magnus, and I have the original purchase contract here. And he had questioned something in regards to a cross out on a contract for line item 2 for the purchase price. We originally were talking about 280,000, and he said, no, I want to do 300,000. When we came to an agreement, and I crossed out 280, but he says there's no initials there. He doesn't have any options. He's just trying to, finagle. He's one of those guys that just anything he can poke at, he tries to poke at. But in reality, he's going to lose his house and not get $1 February 3rd. I think they're going to send out a 30-day notice, and then he'll have another 30 days after that, and then it's done. And he's already, for the last 9 months, tried to figure out how to get caught up on his tax liens and fines from Scottsdale for backyard and nuances that have gone through. And he doesn't have any resources. Plus, I could force a sale if I need to. So my question today is about forcing the sale if it were to get to that, which I don't think it will. I'm meeting with him tomorrow. But my question is it valid when you cross out something and don't initial it? because he seems to think that even though it went from 280 to 3, which is an up, that it's not a valid contract, that something got crossed out. Is that an accurate statement or no?
So generally, the better practice is obviously to have initials on anything that's crossed out by hand. So anything that you adjust or change by hand, you would have it initial. But it's not a legal requirement. It's to avoid the situation of I agreed upon this. No, I agreed upon this. And so when you're talking about a contract, you're talking about, is there a meeting of the minds? Did the parties agree? If the purchase price had gone lower, you may have an issue, right? But
Yeah.
the fact that the purchase price went up and he acknowledges that the copy in his possession has that amount as well. And so that's what was executed, would not invalidate the contract.
Okay. And then there is also an extra layer that I took with him, just because I did have a notary on staff that day, and he didn't have his driver's license. So somebody drove him in. And so we did get a witness as well as a notary. So we have a witness that, confirmed that on that date this got signed. And then we also have a notarized document that it took place. So usually we don't get something notarized with a witness when we're just doing a standard purchase and sale agreement, but it just so happened that there was somebody also there who's a little older. We wanted to make sure that there was no recourse or anything that would come back. So is that okay to have notaries and witnesses on purchase and sale agreements?
Yeah. You can have any document that you want notarized if that's the requirement that's being set. So there's, and frankly, to record a document. So if you want to record the purchase contract,
yes,
it would have to be acknowledged to record the document, absent doing some type of affidavit or memorandum for which you have the legal authority to record.
Inside here in our purchase and sale agreement, it does say that, you're authorizing us to record our interests. And we did record it. And this is the other question that I have. When we recorded it, we realized that we didn't stamp the notary because it was an in-house notary. And so we stamped it after the fact, but the recorded one doesn't have the notary stamp. So even though that's another kind of question mark, if we're going to force the sale, and we can re-record something, but they're always going to see the previous recording with it out there and then a new one with it there. So I'm kind of like figuring out, do we want to do anything with that stamp? And that's an unfortunate situation that we missed the stamp, but we did.
Well, a signature on a purchase contract is enough.
Yeah.
Purchase contracts don't have to be notarized.
Correct. Yeah.
So the stamp or no stamp, it's still a signed contract, right?
Yeah. And that's what I figured. And then about the time that's passed, we do have a clause in our purchase contract that clearly
We would
states,
probably not go much more deeper on that, and we can kind of chat about that offline.
Cool.
As far as timeframes and things like that.
okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. All right. Well, I think that clears up all my questions. So thank you so much for your help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Enjoy marketing. All right. With that, again, we are live at the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup, taking place at the Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. Make sure to follow us. You can follow us on YouTube at InRem Podcast. That's at InRem Podcast. With that, we're getting ready, I think, to start the event here. So we're going to call our little red carpet here a night. So join us next time. Look forward to being here again next month. Again, that's the Arizona Buy and Hold Real Estate Investor Meetup, Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. We'll see you next time.
I'd be remiss, Andy, if we didn't also let our audience know that we do a show similar to this, except not at buy and hold meetup, but we do a show every week at 10 a.m. on Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, 10 a.m. We live stream on NREM. So
Yeah,
I just
that
wanna let our audience know.
that is the InRem podcast every Tuesday at 10 a.m. And you can find all of our previous episodes on YouTube at InRem Podcast. They are all there. So that, yes, I appreciate you bringing that up. With that, make sure to join us Tuesday at 10 a.m. and next month at the Buy and Hold meetup. We'll see you next time.
Have a good evening, everyone.
So